Welcome to the Veteran Founders Story Panel. We will begin shortly. Helena drives business development collisions between Capital Factory portfolio companies to connect with prime defense contractors and the government. There, she identifies and creates opportunities for strategic investment and deal flow, collaborative innovation, research and development projects, and vendor relationships between startups and Fortune 500 corporations. She formerly led deal flow for the accelerator serving North Texas, where she brought in over 40% of the 2019 cohort. Please welcome Helena Krusec.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. So excited to be here with all of you for what I'm hoping is going to be a really good discussion. I would love to first take a moment to introduce my panelists. Y'all should be available to read their bios on the Mission Innovation Summit background page, but I'd love for each of our speakers participating today to have a moment just to introduce themselves, say who they are and what they're doing before we get going on this conversation about veteran founder stories. First, I'd like to welcome up to the stage Brandon Friedman, founder and CEO of Rakkasan Tea. Brandon, hi.
Hey.
All right. I would also like to introduce Jason Hendricks. Jason is the founder of Forgot or Not. Jason, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you. How you doing?
Doing well, doing well. And I'd also like to welcome to the stage Leslie Wegner, owner of North Texas Voice and Speech. Leslie, how are you doing?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing just fine. I'm excited for this conversation. I know we're on a bit of a time crunch because we got a lot of really good content today. So I'd like to just open up the discussion by letting each of you be able to say, a minute or two about who you are, what you're doing, and your companies. So Brandon, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. First of all, it's great to be here. My name's Brandon Friedman. I'm the founder and CEO of Rakkasan Tea Company. The thing about our company is that we import premium loose leaf tea solely from post-conflict countries. So we do that to promote peace and economic development in places that have been touched by war. A lot of veterans who've deployed and served in combat zones have sort of seen what war does to communities. So as a tea company, we're trying to sort of go into those places and give back and also bring Americans some really good tea they've probably never had before.
Awesome. And I can speak to the quality of your tea. I've had a couple of cups and it is excellent. So good. Really glad to have you here today. All right. I'm going to go just counterclockwise, and I'm hoping that y'all have the same screen arrangement as I do, so we're all on the same page. But next clockwise, not counterclockwise. We're going to go to Jason. Jason, go ahead.
Sure. So my name is Jason. I'm the founder of Forgot or Not. We really focus on helping deployed service members and people who can't be at special occasions. So we send a driver to the mall to pick up gifts while the deployed service member is away. And hand deliver it to his recipient. All of our drivers, they carry a 10.5 iPad. So even though the person couldn't be there, you can send a personalized video message. Each experience comes with a full camera crew. So we'd be able to capture every moment for that deployed service member, really helping them out and helping them bring them home, even though they can't be.
That is so memorable. And that's a super unique business model. I like that a lot. Last but certainly not least, Leslie, could you take a moment just to tell us a little bit about North Texas Voice and Speech?
Sure. Yeah, we are a medical-based speech language pathology company, and we specialize in voice, cognitive, and swallowing disorders. And our motto is that we help empower people to re-engage in the world around them. So really, anybody with a voice disorder, anybody with cognition, all kinds of medical issues, we are their care.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, again, thanks all of you for participating again today. A quick note to the audience, this type of event works best if you are asking questions and engaged. So please feel free to put any questions or comments that you have in the chat box to your right. And my team will be sure to let me know when we've got questions. So I'm going to start with a couple of softballs first. Brandon, we'll start with you since, again, you're clockwise and not counterclockwise. You think I'd know that, but sometimes I do not. So let's go first. I want to know more about why you started Rakkasan Tea. So you mentioned the the goal of sourcing teas from places with active conflicts. But I'm interested to know a little bit more about that background and why you started this.
Yeah, sure. So this was not planned at all. I was in the Army, did a couple tours, got out, started another career, and did about 12 years working in communications, politics, PR. Lived in DC for 8 years. And then when I left government, I started my own PR firm with a partner, and I decided that was absolutely miserable. We didn't like it. And I was looking for something totally different to do. I was just kind of burned out. That's why a lot of people start businesses. I was completely burned out with my career, and tea had always been a hobby. It was something that I had picked up serving in Iraq and Afghanistan. We never did anything with locals there unless it was over tea. And I sort of learned tea culture and sort of brought that back with me, but it was always just a hobby. As I started looking for my next career thing, I wondered why I couldn't turn that into a business, and realized that I could leverage my background in the military, having served in these conflict zones, and sort of tie that into the tea industry, because a lot of places that grow tea or they drink tea have been touched by war. And so I found an Army buddy who wanted to start the business with me, and we decided to sort of tie it all together and turn it into Rakkasan Tea Company. And so now we import tea from 9 different countries, 9 different post-conflict countries. Some of them, unfortunately, have recently become current conflict countries. So there's never really a dull moment. But it started off as sort of a passion project, and we're trying to help people, and we're fortunately growing it. We're here in Dallas, and this week we actually just opened our retail store.
Congratulations! That's a huge accomplishment. So, I think that that ties really well into my next question, which is actually for Jason. Speaking of that theme of the military experience informing your business model, Jason, could you talk a little bit about some of the experiences that you've had for delivery, some of your favorite customer experiences? Because it's such a personal thing, and for those experiences to lead into one another, I'd love to hear some stories of that experience for you.
Yeah, I always like to say that each experience that we do is our favorite until we get the next one, right? But the ones that are meaningful are typically the ones that really stick with me. And the one on top of mine is a customer by the name of Joan. So Joan calls us, she calls Forgot or Not and asks if we can deliver her mother a gift experience on Valentine's Day. Now, this was last minute, and it was all the way in Rowlett, Texas. And so for us, it was outside of our base station. It's on Valentine's Day, so it's a snowstorm. So for me, it's an automatic no. But as Joan kind of talked, and she let me know that my no wasn't really an N-O, it was no as in K-N-O-W. I just didn't know enough about her situation. She explained to me that her mother, had just lost her husband, and that this would be her first Valentine's Day alone. And that didn't sit right with me. So I took the mission, and I drove to Rowlett, and I delivered a gift experience. But what made it so memorable was this 90-year-old woman was smiling from ear to ear, and I could see almost all 32 of her teeth. And that really made my day, and it really made me look at why I do what I do. It really puts a smile on people's faces, and I really look at Forgot or Not as the medication to happiness.
I love that. That's a really great mission overall, and that idea of mission, right, and the sort of the reason for why you do what to do. I think that probably flows into also, Leslie, I'd love to hear also in terms of North Texas Voice and Speech. First of all, does your experience in the military, did that inform your business model? And also, is there something to do with the mission for the impact you're trying to bring to the community? I can imagine this is something that's really closely tied.
Absolutely. So I started off as in college as a vocal performance major. My job in the military was actually to be a singer. And so when I got out, I was in, my undergrad at UTD doing grad school at TWU. I learned a lot about these communities that are underserved and do not have access to care. And so my first job after school was in a skilled nursing facility. And you see everybody in there who, got left on the floor for 6 hours and nobody knew that they were there because they lived way out in rural Texas, or they don't have access. They don't get to go to routine care. They don't get imaging like we can offer. And so that piece really stuck with me. And now that we're about to start offering mobile video stroboscopy services, I'm able to actually go into those communities or drive all the way out to, Winsboro, Texas, to give these people the things that they should be able to access. So it's been really, really, informative just from my background in the military, definitely.
That's hugely important, and so I think the underlying message that unites what, all of you have just said is that your experiences as veterans have really impacted your decision to start a business. And I'm hoping that, some of your experience can rub off on some of the people in the audience today and help to guide them to start their own businesses. So I really applaud all of you for the work that you're doing. And, hopefully we can get some more awesome businesses coming to fruition today. Is there anything else that y'all want to mention about your sort of reason for doing this, your reason for starting your business? I know you all sort of touched on it briefly, but I want to make sure that's such an important point that if you have anything else, any parting words of wisdom in terms of why you started that business, I think that would be useful to impart on the community here. For anyone. I know that's open-ended. You all sort of spoke on it. So I'm happy to move on to the next question. But again, that's such an important reason. You got to love what you do and do what you love. So next question I have here. What are some things as an entrepreneur that you wish you had known when you started? This is a long, arduous experience. I'm sure, future you would have some awesome recommendations for past you.
I can start, just leaning into those things that make you unique, those things that you think, keep you from being in the room, that you shouldn't be there, that give you that imposter syndrome feeling. Those are actually the things that are your assets. So for me, it was like, I'm a single mom, I'm a woman entrepreneur, and I'm a veteran. So all three of those come with taboos in a lot of circles and worlds. And those have actually turned out to be the things that my customers appreciate, that I have an insight into, or, it makes me more trustworthy, and it puts me in a unique position to be able to have a different voice than Joe Schmo, off the side of the road. So really lean into those things that make you who you are.
Yeah, great advice.
So for me, it's kind of there's kind of two sides of the same coin. On when you talk to a lot of MBAs who own businesses, they'll tell you like, oh, you don't need an MBA, you don't need that to start a business. And I mean that's true, but at the same time, like one of the things that I kind of wish I had was more foundational business knowledge. Like I didn't know about taxes, I didn't know about logistics, a lot of stuff. That I kind of wish I had known. But at the same time, if I knew then what I didn't know, I wouldn't have started the business. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of glad I was clueless, because if I had known like the complexity and the challenges I was going to face, I never would have taken the leap. But I'm glad I did. And so a lot of times, ignorance is bliss. So starting a business is really hard. You can do it, but it is hard. I don't know if I would have done it if I had known how challenging it was going to be. But, now in hindsight, looking back, I'm glad I did it. But yeah, there are so many business accelerators and incubators that we'll teach you like leadership skills and how to manage, and if you're a veteran, like you kind of got a lot of that. What I needed help with was where do I buy boxes to ship? How much should they cost? How am I taxed if I own an LLC versus a corporation? Just a lot of little questions I mean, I could sit here and just rattle them off that I wish I had known. But you learn it as you go, and so we're in a lot better place now.
I like that. Don't fear the fear of the unknown. Just embrace it and go forward.
If this is something you're passionate about, like you just got to dive in and build the airplane as you're taking off.
Great.
You might crash, but
yeah, I agree with Brandon on that one. I like to tell a lot of people, and I'm not really sure if a lot of the audience watch any action movies or not, but entrepreneurship is something like an action movie, right? You got the superhero, and then you always got a villain, right? And this superhero always go through this rigorous, process to come out on top. Whether if it's him being drowned underwater and he's chained underwater and he have to use a bullet to get out, or he just needs to hide out in South Cuba and he just so happens to have a friend in South Cuba. It's really leveraging your resources and your tools, right? That's what that super villain does. Not villain, but that's what the superhero does. And as an entrepreneur, you have to be able to leverage every tool and resources that you have available to you to push you forward. And so if you can just start and create that crazy vision that nobody can see but you, right? And you can leverage your tools and resources, man, that vision will come true. So if you just keep at it, you just steady persevere. So that's the advice I would give.
I like that. That's a really good piece of advice. I think for a lot of things. That's really good. I have a question here from the audience. I don't see the name attached to it, but the question is, I'm not a veteran. I'm starting a business with a friend or former client who's a veteran. Since the military has their own culture, do you have any advice where you had a partner that was not a veteran?
I took that army of one thing a little too seriously. It's still just me, so I don't have anything. Yeah.
So I've worked. So right now I'm partnered. My business partner is a veteran. My first business was started with a non-veteran. I'm a huge believer in diversity, and not just diversity in terms of race, religion, ethnicity. I mean diversity of experience, age, everything. The more diverse a group you can get, the better your outcomes are going to be. So while I started this business with another veteran, and so we think very veteran-y, but we're sort of on the lookout for somebody who's not a veteran who can sort of give us, that outside way of looking at things. So, if you're a civilian, you're starting a company with a veteran, I would say embrace that and sort of try to leverage the skills and that culture that the veteran brings, but also don't downplay your own, because the veteran is going to need that civilian outlook on things. So
I would agree with Brandon 100%.
Yeah, thought diversity is so much, it's just as important as every other kind of diversity that you can think of. I have a very diverse culturally network, but I realize that we all think exactly alike. So you have to go seek out those opinions that are different from yours and then actually listen to them. Don't just assume you're right.
Great. So my next question for you comes from, sort of respecting those different viewpoints and creating communities of support for them. As an entrepreneur, did you find that there were any resources that helped you to get those differences of opinions, or working within the community? Anyone that you can, recommend as a resource for anyone here in North Texas?
Most definitely. I want to go first on this one because I really want to give credit to where it's due. UTD played a humongous role in a lot of Forgot or Not success, as well as IVMF. IVMF is a really great institution. Bunker Labs, a lot of these resources that are available to veterans are really, really useful, and they really help you from from the idea all the way up into execution. And I think that's as really heroic for those organizations who are helping veterans.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, go ahead, Brandon. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that. UTD has been here in the area. So when I started the company, I was still living in DC. But when I moved back here, right before we launched the company, the only organization we really work closely with is UTD. But the UTD has been great.
So I'll second Bunker Labs. I'm a part of their veterans and residents for this cohort, but I really want to put out those resources for women veterans that are very specific to women veterans, because there's a lot and you might not know about them. So the TWU Center for Women Entrepreneurs is fantastic. They helped me so much right at the beginning, that, you know, figuring out like what Brandon was talking about earlier. What's an LLC? What do I need to do for taxes? You know, the checklists. The Veteran Women's Enterprise Center, they're down by the VA. They're fantastic. I cannot tell you, I've used their consulting services so many times, and it's just gold that comes out of their mouth. And they just tell you everything that you need to know about. I'm asking about government contracting or my marketing, or, you know, just if you need advice for something, they're wonderful. And then not necessarily women geared, but the Texas Veterans Commission, Christina Mortel over the Texas Veterans Commission is fantastic.
Yes.
They will hook you up with it. Everybody, see, yeah, we all got head nods. So yeah, and like Brandon and Jason said, leverage those things that we have available to us, because they're fantastic.
Awesome. We have a question from the audience, and this might be difficult to answer because I know that you can only really answer from your perspective, but it's sort of a thought experiment. Do you think that there's an obvious answer to this, but I'm looking to dig into this a little bit more. Did your military experience influence your thought process when starting your company, and how might that have been different if you weren't a veteran? I guess that's what I'm trying to get out of this.
I'm pretty comfortable in chaotic, unsettled situations because of my military experience, and that has come in really useful in starting a business. But you know, I can't speak to what it would be like to start a business as a civilian.
I definitely think that the military had a major influence in my thought process from starting a business. A lot of people always ask me, like, how do I keep going, you know, after going through so much stuff? And I think the military kind of put us through a lot of different situations that really made us stronger mentally, you know? And so if you can get through the military, you can definitely get through a business. And I think just that thought process alone would help you, you know, overcome and persevere through obstacles.
Yeah, I'll second both Brandon and Jason, and add that when I started North Texas Voice and Speech, it was really easy to put a whole lot of structure into my business, because that's the example that we had. You know, every minute of our day was scheduled. At least in my units, we were all in-house with the shops, so we had ops, admin, you know, supply, all of that good stuff in our little building there. And so when I was actually sitting down to sort of sketch out what my business would look like, I sort of modeled it off of, okay, well, I've got shops over here for this, that, and the other. And it's made it really easy to keep organized. I think we're pretty good at that just inherently now.
That's a super interesting point. Yeah, Brandon, Jason, did you find that you took the same into your experiences building your company? Taking that sort of order, that help?
Yeah, I mean, I try to inject as much order and discipline into the process as possible. But man, every day is different here. It's not like the Army where, you know, you show up every morning for PT and then you go to the chow hall, and every day here is different. So
I can see that. I mean, I try to do it, but I mean, I'm human, you know, and things happen.
Definitely. There's only so much chaos. I totally understand that, no matter how comfortable you are with chaos. So we mentioned earlier the sorts of organizations who are doing a lot of good work to support veteran business owners. Do you have any suggestions for things that we can be doing better as a community to support you? And I'm thinking about you now, but I'm also thinking about, like when you just transitioned out, is there anything we can be doing to help transitioning veterans get into better positions?
I mean,
go ahead.
You go ahead, Brandon.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, so the IVMF, they have this program, this boot camp for veterans, where you do some training online about your business, and then you go into the residency, and it's a really cool program, right? Once they fly you out to wherever you're going and learn about business, but then when you come back home, it's back to normal, right? And you have to really leverage the resources that are locally, like UTD has been, a big resource for me. But even in that degree, sometimes I feel guilty because how much help can you ask for one organization? So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if there was more resources available locally, that would be a big help outside of maybe UTD and their hub and what they can maybe offer. Maybe pulling in other small business resources to maybe help these transition veterans.
Mm-hmm. Good idea.
So I've seen a couple of gaps in the support efforts for startups, having started a couple of businesses. One of the big ones for me is I think the organizations that want to help startups, there's a huge tech focus. They're very tech heavy. Everybody wants to be the next unicorn and have the great app that gets 200 million downloads. But if you drive around, most businesses are not Silicon Valley tech companies. I mean, you got landscaping, lawn services, you got restaurants. You got tea companies. A lot of companies aren't tech focused, and so basically I'm kind of trying to stand up for the little company, the little startups that are not going to be the next big tech company. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see more support for consumer packaged goods, service industries like Forgot or Not, stuff like that. And then one of the other things where I think there could be some help is in the really early stage funding. Just about all the organizations I talk to that want to invest in companies, they want you to show $500,000 a year in revenue, and they don't want to invest less than 6 figures. But it's hard to get to that point, when you're first starting. Like, when we were first starting, if we had somebody who dropped 50,000 on us or 30,000, outside of the Kickstarter we ran, that would have been great. So sort of that sub $100,000 range, I have found that it's actually hard. It seems to me that it's harder to find that money early because a lot of organizations don't want to gamble on a company that hasn't made a lot of money yet. It's hard to find money in that amount. It's easier, once you get to 300, 500K a year in revenue, then you go out and find an investor, and they'll shower you with riches. But it's hard when you're starting. So any more help at that level, I think, would be good.
Great. Yeah, absolutely.
You can find that help in Silicon Valley for sure.
Anything else to add?
Yeah, I'd say what was missing for me and what's been the game changer as far as me growing and being connected is being connected with people like me who hold me accountable, because we are so used to that team environment. We're a team organization in the military, and then you come out and you're all by yourself. Your entrepreneurship is pretty lonely. So there's nobody to bounce ideas off of or learn best practices from, because we're all doing best practices in our own fields, but not in business. We're not business people, right? So, or we are business. I gotta stop saying that. We are business people. We just don't look like the traditional business person. So hooking us up with other people who are doing the same thing has been monumental for me. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's really great. And I definitely want to get to some of the questions in the chat box, but one that I do want to pull on really quickly, and this is I'm guilty of a hammer seeing everything as a nail, right? I work for a venture capital fund, and so we are all about technology, right? It's hard to serve services and lifestyle businesses in the venture capital world. So I'd love to dig a little bit more into your experiences there. And this is for all of you. Brandon, you brought this up, but this is for everyone. When you started your business, where did you get the startup capital for this? Did you make massive investments on your own, or was there a particular SBA office that you were able to get funding from? How did you manage to do this? Because it's lonely and it's a monumental ask sometimes for people.
Personal savings, and we ran a successful Kickstarter campaign. So we crowdfunded it. We had a goal of trying to raise $30,000 in the Kickstarter, and we raised 36. And that $36,000 was sort of like our nest egg that we used to start the company. And then where we sort of ran into issues is, so we used that $36,000 to start the company, but you got to buy inventory, you got to buy shelves, you got to buy all this stuff. And then once we used that to start, then at that point, we didn't really have a lot of capital to grow, to take that next step to start to, now we've opened the doors. Now let's slowly start to grow it. Let's do some advertising and this and that. And that was where we kind of fell off the ledge. Because we didn't have that next, I used $36,000 to start it, but then if we had another $36,000 to start to grow it, I think we would have been a lot better off, a lot faster. Mm. But yeah, Indiegogo, Kickstarter, stuff like that. And the reason those are also those crowdfunding services are good also is because they kind of tell you if your idea is worth it or not. Mm-hmm. Because if your idea is good, and you're going to learn whether you're a good networker, because you got to raise the money, and you're going to learn whether the idea of your company resonates with people. And then if it doesn't, then you may have just saved yourself a lot of grief. If it turns out that your idea just wasn't that great.
Good point. Yeah. Leslie.
Yeah. So I started North Texas. I started as a sole proprietor while I was still in skilled nursing. And so it was kind of a side hustle, just picked up a few clients here and there. And then when I had a ridiculous amount of interest, I decided to quit my full-time job, go PRN, and then just was going to slowly tap dance in one and out of the other. I have very, very little overhead. So, it's my computer, pair of headphones, and some recording equipment until pretty soon here, there's going to be some overhead. But, starting up, it was all sort of funded by me getting paid from these people and just leaving it in that account and supporting myself through my regular job. But then COVID hit. So that, everybody was sort of devastated by that business wise. So, but yeah, just leaving some money in from my patients.
I have one point about that also. Obtain as much credit as you can while you have money, like while you have a job, like try to increase your credit cards, try to get loans to start your business while you have the money. Because if you try to get loans from banks, like after you started running out of money, they're not going to give you money. And that was a hard lesson. Like we were like, oh, we don't need the money. Like we're good. And then we had a slump. It's like, oh, well, let's go get a loan from a bank. And then they kind of, they flip through the paperwork and they're like, eh. So.
Good financial advice.
Yeah. So get the money to fund your company when you don't need it, because you may need it. And when you do need it, then you can't get it. So.
Good advice.
Entrepreneurs have to also be careful too, especially if they're in an ideal stage to not just wipe out their entire savings or, going to go get all these different loans, for an idea. I think it's really important for entrepreneurs to really bootstrap in the beginning and really just start out with that minimum viable product and really just continue to improve and be more customer focused until you really need those additional funds. A lot of entrepreneurs think, they have an idea, they automatically need a venture capitalist. They automatically need to go, sell their home and maybe risk their personal funds. And that's not always the case. Brandon may have had, really good traction before he decided to go get money from a bank. I just, want entrepreneurs who are watching to just be very careful when wiping out your savings and just, going to go get a loan from banks before actually having proof of concept. I think that's really important.
I'll also say something that was really helpful for me when I quit my job is that I stayed in the same space as a contractor and went and worked for somebody who has a clinic like mine, but not here. She's not my competitor. So it taught me best practices. It taught me what my business should be able to do and what it should look like. And it doesn't give me false hopes. I'm not being grandiose about what I can do. So just a good way to keep your income coming in.
Definitely. All great advice. So I'm going to shift over to some questions that we've gotten in the comments box. And some of these are a little bit more pointed towards individuals. So I'll name each of you as we go through these questions. So the first one is for Brandon, and it's about Rakkasan. So first, where did the name come from? And second, what teas can you recommend for someone who's not a tea drinker, who's just getting started? And then what are some more advanced ones that you can recommend that are really good?
Yeah, sure. So the name Rakkasan is the old Japanese word for parachute, and the transliteration is falling down umbrella. And the name comes from World War II during the occupation of Japan, when the army unit I was in occupied Japan, and it was an airborne unit, and they called them falling down umbrellas, Rakkasan. And so that unit took the nickname, and now it's the 3rd Brigade of the 101st Airborne Division. It's called the Rakkasans. The contemporary word for parachute in Japanese is parachuto, but it used to be falling down umbrellas, and so that's where the name came from. Rakkasan. It's a unit in the 101st. As far as teas, we have sampler packs that we offer for new tea drinkers, and I think that's a good way to go if you can find them from us or another tea company. Just a good way to sample stuff. But I'm a big fan of learning tea off of just a good, robust black tea. It's the easiest tea to make. You make it at a full rolling boil, and it's sort of what tea is. And then as you get a little more advanced, you start messing around with water temperature, steeping time, stuff like that. Then you can get into green teas and white teas, oolong teas, stuff like that. Another thing for a new tea drinker might be to try some blends that have more obvious flavors, like fruit teas, stuff like that. Because sometimes tea can be a bit of an acquired taste, just like coffee, wine, beer. So you may want to start with a more obvious, flavor tea. But yeah, nothing really beats a good bold black tea.
Solid advice. And I don't remember what I sampled when I came to your office last, but I think I mentioned I like green tea. I think that's what we had, but I'll have to come back and get some solid black tea.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Jason, this next one is for you. So first, congratulations on winning Comet X this semester. Can you speak a little bit to how programs like that have helped you in your journey?
Yeah, the knowledge in the room, learning from the instructor who has numerous years of experience is always helpful in a lot of different programs. Typically, if they're an instructor, hopefully they have experience anyway. But I think programs like that really help because they help answer questions that you've always wondered in your head, but you didn't know who to ask. I know I kind of got tongue tied, but like, let's say if you have a question, but you don't know how to ask the question. we have somebody in the program to kind of help you walk you through the steps of your product or service before you actually launch it. And I think that's very helpful.
Great. Yeah, no, solid. So I'm seeing the sign that we've got 5 minutes left. So anyone who's got questions, please put them in the chat now, and I'm gonna go through a couple of these just rapid fire. So question from the audience. I know that we touched on this a little bit, but they're wondering, what skills did you obtain during your service that have helped you? You know, we've talked about managing the chaos, right? We've and accepting the things that you can't control, the schedule and the routine, things like that. Were there any specific things that you learned in your specific role in the military that you've taken directly into your business? Anything you can recommend?
Perseverance. I know I mentioned it a few times already, but I really believe the military taught me how to persevere. I think I persevere so much it's kind of scary, like I'm always like boom, 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 just like knocking down doors. Like I think the military really, really instilled that in me, and it's really hard to get me to quit. Like I just keep going. It can be like agitating to some people. That's how much I just keep going.
Well, someone's got to do it, so it's a good thing that you do.
My mom calls me North. She says, "You're North. Everybody else is East, West, or South, but you're North." And I'm like, "Well, I don't know that that's me. That's the Army."
I like that though. That's a unique one. I'm wondering, so Leslie, this is one for you that I have about your specific experience. So going on to form, a voice and speech, business later on. What did you do during the military? Were you a medic? What was your background? Did you do anything that led directly into that? Because I know that you mentioned that there was some nursing as well, and so I'm interested in that pathway and how you
I wasn't in medical at all until I was under the MedCom unit at Fort Sam Houston, but I was never in the medical field. I was an Army bandsman. And so we would go around and just do shows, and I was a flautist and a singer, and that was my day job, going and playing retirement ceremonies, marches, singing. Really, probably about 50% of my job was singing the anthem all over the place. So I can sing in my sleep still. But now I lost my train of thought. So I don't know that there was any one thing that I was able to take from my Army, singing to come up. Well, I take that back. You know what? Because it takes a certain level of experience as an occupational voice user to be able to come out and help an occupational voice user. Mm-hmm. It's hard, I think, for an SLP, a speech language pathologist, to do voice therapy with somebody if they don't understand what it was like going through the rigors of using your voice that much every single day. Mm-hmm. And so absolutely, that's been invaluable advice that I'm able to pass on to my patients.
Yeah. I remembered you saying that you were a vocalist, and here I was wondering, were you the singing medic going around and making people feel better as you're patching up limbs and singing to them? Or
that's exactly where I lost my train of thought. So a lot of my job was actually to go and sit bedside with soldiers who were injured and sing to them because they couldn't come out. They were burned or they had injuries. Especially in Texas, you can't come outside. It's too hot as it is. And so I got to see, actually, that's where I really got to know what speech pathologists do, because I would see them come in and work on language with, TBI victims or, somebody who had inhaled a burn blast and, the inside of their lungs were scorched. They were working on voice. So it was really interesting to get to see how that works within the military, like in the MTFs and hospitals and stuff.
Super interesting. No, I'm glad we got to dig into that more. That's super interesting. I love hearing that about your company. So, look, we're getting the wrap up signal here. I want to make sure that we get a chance to give you all a chance to go around the horn and say any final parting words of wisdom for everyone in the audience today. Anything you'd like to add before we go?
Yeah, if you're an entrepreneur or thinking about jumping into entrepreneurship, really check out UTD and a few programs that they do have. They're not paying me to say that, I promise. I did ComEdX program. I'm in their MS program right now for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. and it is really, really a load of information. Really helped me out a lot. So if you haven't already checked them out, really check them out.
Awesome.
I would say leverage all the resources that you have available to you. Some of them are useless and some of them are gold. So just keep digging for it and systematize everything that you can as early as you can in your business, because the more it's on autopilot, the less, you can offload to your other more important things to do.
Great advice. Brendan, last words, you get the honor.
No, I would again echo what everybody else just said. UTD has been great for us. And if anybody has any questions of me personally about entrepreneurship or about my company, you can always shoot me a note.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much to our speakers here today, Leslie, Jason, and Brendan. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to chat about this. Thank you also to UTD and everyone for putting on this awesome event. Stick around. We've got some awesome other panels coming up. You'll see my face again here shortly on just another one. So we'll see you all around. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, y'all.